Welcome to Embracing Autism IRL. Today's episode is sponsored by Little Big Sister by Amy McCoy. Amy is an autism parent, award winning children's author, and disability educator. Her debut children's novel, Little Big Sister, shares the sibling perspective of growing up with a brother who has autism. Amy combines her expertise as a former elementary school teacher with her experience of parenting a child with autism as she visits elementary schools, libraries, bookstores, and parenting groups offering interactive presentations highlighting disability acceptance. Amy lives in New York with her husband, Greg, and their children, Matthew and Kathryn, who are the inspiration of her books and her work. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for inviting me on, Leah. I'm happy to
Thank
be
you so
here.
much for coming. So, I wanted to start off to get to know you a little bit better.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little more about your inspiration for writing Little Big Sister and what motivated you to focus on sibling relationships when it comes to autistic children?
Yes. So, all of my writing, all of my books, everything that I do is really inspired by my own two children. And you asked what was my inspiration. Well, there was this one moment when my children were much younger than they are now, when they were in early elementary school. My daughter, who's about 2 years younger than my son with autism, she was at that age where she wanted to have play dates and was inviting friends over. And she quickly learned a very difficult lesson that her friends don't get it about autism. She had this one particular play date that the friend said something like, wow, your house is loud. And after that play date, my daughter, who at the time was in first or second grade, said, Mommy, I don't want to invite my friends over anymore. They don't understand about autism. And that really hit me in the heart. And I said, Oh, well, what can we do to help your friends understand autism better so you can feel comfortable inviting friends over? And she said, I don't know, Mom, I'm going to bed. And that was my light bulb moment. I said, Oh, I think I'm going to write a book about this. And all her friends are going to read it and they're going to understand. So that was the moment I knew I wanted to write a book and put some information out there into the hands of her friends. And then the book has grown and been placed in the hands of many, third graders across the country.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's often overlooked when it comes to an autism diagnosis is the sibling relationships and the sibling dynamics. A lot of times the parents get kind of overwhelmed or really pulled into the world of autism and doing everything that they can for that autistic child. And the sibling is kind of left to their own devices sometimes. So I think it's really important and really good that you're bringing that to the forefront. So,
Yes.
along those lines, what unique struggles do you feel that siblings of autistic children often experience, and how does your book in particular address some of these challenges?
Okay. Well, there's many different challenges that are unique to siblings who have a brother or sister with autism, or really with any disability. Um, some of this is from research, and some of this is from my own experiences. But the main ones are like, a lot of siblings say they feel that they have to be perfect because they realize how much struggle their parents are going through with their brother or sister. So they kind of put on this brave face and don't want to cause any other problems. Some siblings report that they have a hard time expressing their own feelings about what's going on. Um, Another big struggle is that siblings feel that they have a very different idea of family and home than their friends do. Family and home is usually a place of togetherness and there's privacy. And in a lot of homes like yours and mine, there's not a lot of privacy. There are professionals coming in and out of the door, and it's not that place with just your family anymore. Um, a big one that I've noticed with many with my daughter and some of her friends who are also experiencing this life is they feel that their problems are minimized. So, for example, say when my daughter was a little bit younger, say when she was in middle school, if she wanted something like a later bedtime or the newest phone, asking for that doesn't seem fair when she's looking at what her brother's struggling with. And I think that's one of the feelings that a lot of siblings to those with autism go through. They also have, this is something that we as parents can really relate to. They feel isolated. They don't know that they're not the only one. Some siblings report that they feel like they're asked to help too much. And lastly, most siblings report that they feel like they were almost forced to grow up too quickly. So those are the main struggles from the research that I've done in this area, and also from what I've experienced just watching my daughter and some of her friends as they grew up.
Yeah, I think that parentification is definitely something that comes up a lot when it comes to the sibling relationships. It's a tricky one because it's almost like it happens naturally without the parent really even realizing that it's happening. So it's something that parents
Very
have to
true.
kind of proactively keep an eye out for. So you mentioned very briefly that your children's book is written at a third grade reading level. What led you to choose this specific level of readability for the content of Little Big Sister?
That's such a great question. So before I was an author, I used to be a teacher. In particular, I was a reading teacher. And I realized, so I taught all of the elementary grades. And I realized as a teacher, as a professional, but also as a parent, kindergarten through second grade in the elementary years, kind of everyone's my friend. Everyone's my friend. And if someone in the first or second grade classroom is leaving to go to speech or OT or PT or a special service, that's kind of cool. Like, oh look, Matthew gets to go to speech. Can I go with him? It's there's a natural but fun curiosity. That's kind of cool. He gets to go. Then I noticed by third grade, why is Matthew going to speech 3 times a week? Why is Matthew going to, there's more questions. Why is he always leaving the room? Why does Matthew, I'm just using Matthew as the name because that's my son's name. Why does he have a special teacher with him all the time? There's all these questions. And I just felt like by that age, the questions needed to be answered. And that's what I'm hoping that my book is doing for third graders and across the country who are choosing to read my books.
That's really clever. I didn't even think about that because I'm
Yeah.
not as in tune with when the age levels differ for reading. But I know that, like, for our kids, they're 5 and 6, and they definitely are right where you're saying, where everybody's your friend, and anytime anyone
Mhm.
leaves, it's cool. So nobody has questioned them in their therapies yet. So I guess we'll
Right.
have to worry once we get around third grade. So at least I got this book though, right? Now I can
Great.
work with that.
Yes. Mhm.
So I saw that the book has the seal on it, and I hadn't heard of this, so I just wanted to ask you. So it says it's a Next Generation Indie Book Award winner. That's really cool. So I wanted to learn a little bit about what that means and what you think sets Little Big Sister apart from the other books in this genre.
Oh, great. So it's an indie award is an independently published book, and I was honored to receive that award for book number one in the series, and then book number two also won some awards as well. I was just very honored. It's also on Amazon. I didn't even know this happened, but on Amazon, it's called a Teacher's Pick book. So when I found that out, I was really blown away because as a former teacher, knowing that teachers have nominated my book as a teacher's pick, it just meant a lot to me. And then you asked what sets it apart is um, as a former reading teacher, I know that there are some kids who love reading, and there's some kids who kind of like reading, and there's some kids who just greatly dislike reading. They don't want to sit with a book ever. So, what I did to make my book appealing to all different levels of readers in the third grade time frame is at the end of each chapter, the main character, whose name in the book is Katie, she's modeled after, she's like a fictional version of my daughter. At the end of each chapter, Katie, this main character, shares a list of what she's keeping in her list book. So her list book is sort of like a journal, sort of like her thoughts. And so, for example, one of the end of list books is like wishes, like what do I wish? And one of them is like, I wish my brother would play with me. I wish my brother didn't flap his arms. So if you're reading this book and you want to get into the content, but you're reading it independently and you don't like reading, you might skip the chapter, but you're going to read that list page because it's fun to read what looks like a handwritten page by someone who's your age. So I think that might set it apart a little bit. And I had a lot of fun making those end of chapter lists as an author.
That's really cool. I always love when books are interactive. I'm actually really attracted to
Mhm.
books that are interactive. And I
Mhm.
know that, like, my kids, I really like getting them books that have that part too, like the big life journals and things like that. So that's cool. I'm definitely looking forward to bringing that with my kids when they're a little bit older. They're still a little
Yes.
too young. Um, so the next question that I have for you is, what key themes are you exploring in Little Big Sister that you hope would resonate with the parents that might be navigating similar family dynamics?
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback from parents saying that when they've read my book aloud to their siblings, their children who are siblings, they it often generates a lot of really healthy conversation and question starters about their own sibling, which has been helpful. But the key theme that I'm hoping parents take away is the overall theme of you are not alone. There are many other families who are experiencing this, who are experiencing growing up, raising a child who has autism or two, and navigating parenthood with one foot in the special ed world and one foot in the general ed world. So that's what I'm hoping parents can take away from it as well.
I'm also wondering, what do you think about the siblings who would be reading this?
Oh yeah, it's same thing. I'm there like that. I when I was writing the book, I really had a few goals in mind. One was to help children like my daughter understand that they are not alone, and one was to help children like my daughter's friends who are not growing up alongside a brother or sister with autism, help them have a window into that world so that they could understand what that's like more.
Yeah, it almost seems like it works on multiple levels because you've got
Mhm.
the friendship look, you've got the sibling look in, and then also the parents kind of get a sneak peek perspective too, because you might not necessarily, as a parent, understand what that sibling is going through or how they're perceiving things, or maybe how people might be treating them differently at school because they are the sibling of a special needs child. And
Exactly.
because you don't really have a way to easily start that conversation with your child, I feel like when you have a book like this, it kind of opens the door to that conversation. Is that something that you think that, like, those discussion questions could possibly kind of help with?
Definitely. I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents who read it at home with their children saying that they're so grateful that they were able to have an open and honest conversation with their child about their other children or child with autism, and also from third and fourth grade teachers who read it as a read aloud. They say it just opens up so many healthy conversations about what is autism.
Yeah. Actually, along those lines, so why do you think those conversations are important, or why do you think it's really important to express these experiences that siblings are feeling?
Well, I feel that children and adults both, we learn through our friends, we learn from other experiences, and there's so many children with all different disabilities in public schools. And if other children can understand their needs a little bit better, it's just so important. I'll tell you, I visit a lot of elementary schools as a visiting author and give presentations, and I am blown away. Not it doesn't This doesn't happen every time, but every once in a while a child will raise their hand and they'll say, you know, I have something sort of like autism. I have something that makes me different. And they'll say, I have ADHD. And my mouth will drop to the floor, and I'll, like, just the self-awareness that these kids have. And then I'll ask them if they want to explain to their classmates or to the auditorium full of students, do you want to explain what that means? So I've had that happen more than a handful of times. So I think it also helps kids who have a disability, have an IEP, feel different. It helps them feel more included and more seen and heard.
Yeah, I think that the number one mistake the parents often make is when their child gets a diagnosis, they think that they need to kind of keep it quiet and not let the kid know. And they think that they're doing this for good reason. They think, like, if we don't tell them that they're autistic or they have ADHD, then they won't feel different. But they don't realize that, like, the kid's going to feel different anyway because society's going to treat them differently. So
Exactly.
giving them this knowledge is power. It's giving them the resources that they need to be able to live in a world that's not made for them, essentially.
So true. And I feel like I read this somewhere where they say, a lot of times parents think that they are burdening a sibling by not explaining their sibling's disability. They don't want to give them too much information about it or explain it because they feel like that's a burden to the children, so it's a burden to the sibling. So the sibling is literally left in the dark with no answers and, perhaps making up in their mind, why does my sibling have this and I don't have it? That's another major, like the guilt. Why does my sibling have this and I don't have this? So when I give parent presentations, I often give presentations to parent groups as well. We talk about this and we talk about how it is so important to give the siblings age appropriate information. What they're asking for, just give them information. And that can be done a lot of times with children's books. There's so many books out there, and also books for younger kids. Then my book is for third grade, obviously, but there's so many books out there even for younger kids that I can recommend.
Yeah, I think that's the other question that people often have is when is the right age? How young should you tell them? I know, like, for us and our family, like, we're like, as young as you can. Like, when they're starting to talk, we already talk to them about it. And, like, they know they're autistic. They don't really understand what that means. But it's kind of funny because since we're a neurodivergent family, I was diagnosed as well. So the three of us are autistic, but Matt is not, and they will point it out and they'll be like, hold on a second, he's not in the cool kids club, why is he not autistic too? And they try to tell him, oh, it's okay, you can be autistic, like, to comfort
That's
him.
great. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so I
so
think
great.
the earlier you tell kids, like, the more likely
Absolutely.
they are to embrace it.
As soon as my daughter started asking questions, she was probably about 3 years old when she had the verbal ability to ask questions about her older brother. And prior to that, I was reading books, children's books about children who are a little bit different, that type of thing to her. But as soon as she started asking questions was the time I started talking to her about it.
That's awesome. Well, it's good to have something like Little Big Sister that kind of helps ease that conversation for parents who might not know how to even start that
Mhm.
conversation. So I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned that there's other projects that you're working on or other books that you've done. Are there any upcoming projects or additional books that you're working on that you'd also like to share with our listeners?
Yes, thank you for asking. So, Little Big Sister is the first book and the main book. That one came out in 2016. 3 years later, there was a sequel to that, which is Little Big Sister on the Move, where the family moves to a different state and what that's like for the main character, Katie. There will be a third book in that series, which is the third grade for readability and content. But my next book that will hopefully be coming out, it's either this fall or in January, is a book for younger kids. This is actually, funny enough, it's actually a book that I did not want to write, but it was in my heart and I wrote it. It is basically the same characters, but at a younger age. And remember, before we were talking about, I was saying how third grade was my focus area because I felt like that was the age that kids were asking a lot about my son. So now, as a visiting author, when I go to schools, a lot of things have changed since that time. So figure I wrote this book in 2016. My kids were in elementary school. Now my kids are 18 and 20. A lot has changed, the way that's what's going on in schools now. There's so much more awareness and acceptance out there. So what I'm finding is when I go to elementary schools to speak with third and fourth graders about my book, the principals are all saying, well, don't you have a book for younger students? Don't you have a young book for younger students? I said, no, I don't, because I feel that this topic is really more appropriate for third grade. That's when they have the questions. But then what I was noticing is that all of these schools, I visit a lot in April for Autism Acceptance Month, but at all of these schools, they'll, the day that I come, they all have their kids wearing blue shirts for autism acceptance. And what I know as a parent is when your kids are in elementary school, one day's pajama day, one day's wear crazy socks day, one day's hat day, one day's crazy shirt, whatever, all those fun days that the kids get to do. And I didn't want wear your blue shirt day to get mixed in with pajama day and crazy hair day. I wanted wear your blue shirt day to have meaning. So my book is called My Blue Shirt, an Autism Story, and it's basically the same two characters, Katie and her older brother. It's modeled after my son, who in real life is Matthew. In the book, he's Mikey, and Katie's a first grader in the book, and it's a picture book. And I've teamed up with an amazing illustrator, and she's just about done with the illustrations. Now we're at the part where we're placing the text, and it's been a really fun project. So that's the next one coming out, is My Blue Shirt, an autism awareness story. And it's the other reason I wrote that, Leah, is because I am finding that because autism awareness and autism acceptance is such a big thing in April, and elementary schools really jump on board with that. They all, they have banners, and like I said, some of them actually order blue shirts for the whole staff to wear. I'm imagining at a faculty meeting in March, a principal saying to her staff and faculty, oh, next month is Autism Acceptance Month. Try to teach your kids about autism and what it is. And if you're a new teacher, you might not know how to do that. Even if you're a seasoned teacher, you might not feel comfortable doing that. And my hope is that teachers who find my book, they can read it in class and feel that they have educated their students on what autism is. So those are the reasons why I wrote it.
Yeah, I almost feel like if you're a seasoned teacher, it might actually be harder because so much has changed from when you originally learned all that
Yes.
you might not even really know anymore.
You might not know what the right thing is to say. And so
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that my book gives those words to the teachers and helps them feel confident teaching
So
about autism.
when is this book coming out?
So I was hoping it was going to be out this fall, but we're really taking our time with like these finishing touches. So I think it's going to be more like January. So I'll definitely let you know once I have a release date.
Awesome. That's awesome because I also have a little baby, so that'll probably be more appropriate for her.
Yes, definitely.
So is there any key message or key takeaway that you hope parents would gain from reading Little Big Sister? Like if there was one thing that
Mhm.
they take away from it, what is it that you want them to hear?
I would have to just repeat this. You are not alone. I think so many parents and so many families feel isolated and they don't have connections. And there are so many families like ours out there. And once you make those connections and meet those people, you can feel so much better.
That's definitely the theme that I hear from parents is that feeling alone. That's part of the reason they listen to this podcast because they
Yes,
feel connected to other stories. So
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you something that I ask everybody who comes on the
Okay.
show.
Yes.
Our podcast is called Embracing Autism. And interestingly enough, everyone has kind of like a different reaction to that phrase. So I wanted to hear what yours
Mm.
is. What does embracing autism mean to you?
All right. Well, embracing autism, the first thought that comes to mind is giving autism a hug. That's really what it is. It's appreciating autism for what it is. And it's not all, giggles and sunshine. Autism has very difficult times, very difficult days, but it also has a lot to celebrate. So I think it's, enlightening other people about what autism is, and giving some love and attention and acceptance and a big hug to autism.
I like that.
I
So
hope my
are
answer
there
wasn't too long.
Oh, no, that's fine. I love it because it's really, like, warm and fuzzy. Like, that's
Yeah.
what I think of when I think of embracing autism, warm and fuzzy
Yes.
feelings. So, are there any other resources that you can share with my audience or any freebies on your website or anything?
Yes, on my website, I'm sure you'll put that in your show notes, but it's just littlebigsisterbook.com, very easy to remember. If you are a teacher or if you want your child's teacher to read my book with their class, there is a section for teachers, there's a section for parents, there's a section for kids. In the teacher section, there is a free resource, which is basically a read-along packet for that the teachers can either print out or put in their Google Classroom or whatever they use. for students to make connections while they are listening to the book. So really all the teacher has to do is buy one copy and, read it. And each chapter has its own, it's kind of like a reader's guide so that the children can stop after each chapter and really think about what connections they're making. So it's not so much a, literal comprehension, like who said what on page 2. It's more of really connecting with the meaning of the book. So there's a freebie for teachers there. On the parents, families, and children's sections of the site, there's also some coloring pages and fun things on my site. If your child ends up reading the book and enjoying the characters, there's a lot of fun things on the site there too.
That would be a good way to incorporate a younger kiddo too, if they're maybe not at the reading level, but they're at the coloring level.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and another some I was doing some beta readings of my new book in a friend's second grade classroom this past winter, and she even said, "Oh, Amy, you know what you can do? The children's book, the one that's coming out soon, the picture book." She said, "If you're a third grade teacher and you're going to read the chapter book, the children's book that you can just sit down and read in 12 or 15 minutes, or however long it takes, I haven't timed it yet." But the children's book, the picture book, is a great intro to the chapter books because it's the same characters. So it's like, all right, these are going to be the characters, and now we're going to read the chapter book, which is without pictures.
So it's like a prequel in a way.
It is. That's what I've been telling the kids. And one of these little kids, so cute, at one of my presentations said, "So is that book number 0?"
Aw, that's so cute.
Isn't
Yes,
that great?
absolutely. So that one's the one for my littlest one.
Yes, yes.
So, where can our listeners find you? So again, for the listeners, the book, you can find it on littleBigSisterBook.com for those of you listening on audio only. But where can people get connected with you online?
Okay, so on Instagram, I am Amy McCoy author, and on Facebook, I'm Amy McCoy children's author.
Okay.
So I think you can find me in those places, and obviously on my website, you can also link to the Facebook and Instagram pages through my littleBigSisterBooks.com website.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So y'all heard that. That is at Amy McCoy author on Instagram, and McCoy is McCoy. And then on Facebook, it's at Amy McCoy children's author. So make sure you go out there and give her a follow.
Thank
Well,
you.
well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think that this book really presents a good opportunity to open discussions, not just with siblings, but I think with like peers and students in school as well, because it's kind of a similar relationship. So I really hope that you can get this book out there and hopefully it'll help make a change.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Have a great one.
Thanks, you too. Bye bye.